Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So this game is going to be against none other than Anthon2010. Yeah, you've heard it right. The name always brings a bang to the board. So in this game it was a French defense, but I played it so that Black couldn't exactly get the French that Black wanted. So I played Queen E2. Saying if you play d5, I'm going to take, and if you play queen takes d5, I'm going to play knight c3. And I'm going to make it look like a Scandinavian, when e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes, and knight to c3. So that was my goal. So queen to e2, knight to e7, now f4. And I try to do something different. c6, okay. I thought this was somewhat odd because I was expecting d5 first, but I did get it. Played d3, knight f3, and I played this sort of setup. Bringing my bishop out, castles, bringing my knight out, bishop out, just something like that. So after knight g6, I was a little bit hesitant to play bishop to g2. Because I saw this opportunity on this e-file, I said, what happens if pawn takes, and then move f5, right? And I asked myself if it is worth the time and the effort to do so, right? And I said, yeah, I guess it's worth the effort, but should I do it? Well, in a game, I would do it because it looks pretty interesting. F takes. But after queen takes, I wasn't sure. I mean, knight f6, queen d2, right? It looks okay. I'm up a pawn. It looks pleasant for me, right? As long as I play bishop g2 and castles, and so everything is okay. I'm pretty smooth. But I said, am I having too much fun? Maybe. So let's go bishop g2. Let's just get the knight out. And if you play bishop b6, I'm going to bring my knight here. I'm going to play h4. Now I'm going to have some fun, and at the same time I'm going to try to restrict this knight from doing its job. So I play h5, and I play g4. I go on a ride. If you play f5, I'm going to take and prevent the rook from doing anything. g6, and now I'm sort of thinking, these pieces are a bit very passive. It's not ideal to leave them in a passive location, so I said bring it on. I'm going to play knight g5. Number one, I'm going to threaten knight e6, and number two, I'm going to connect my queen to this h5 pawn. So knight to f8, very good move, doing both jobs. Pawn takes, and now d4. So what I'm doing here is I'm now cementing, I'm saying you cannot prevent me from doing anything here, because eventually I will bring my bishop out, I will castle, I will bring my rook to g1 and try to create an attack this way, right? I can also think about queen to h5, so that's another thing to consider. Queen d7, bishop to d2, I play knight to f3 to prevent the trade of pieces, because personally I looked in this position and I sort of looked at the value of this knight over this bishop, and I said, I like the knight here, particularly because it's very strong in trying to attack Black's camp. So I said, I'm going to retreat it and protect it. And here came knight e6. And at this point in the game, I remember I was not feeling so great, because I said, well, my pawn is sort of falling apart, and I don't have any special way to defend it, but I'm going to try something. I'm going to play knight to c5. And here, knight takes f4. And at this moment, I was wondering if I had a fun way out. And I thought about it, and I said, I probably have a lot of counterplay from it. bishop takes, and now queen d2. I'm threatening the knight, and I'm threatening the queen. So what does black have to do? Take. Now it's a check. The queen blocks, and now I play the very silent move, queen h2. I'm doubling, right? But at the same time, I'm preparing to castle and bring this rook to g1. So king h8, castles, bishop d7, doesn't matter. Bring my rook to g1, queen f7, and now the follow through, e6, saying if you take on e6, knight takes, and if queen takes, I'm going to checkmate you, and if you don't do anything, I'm going to take on h7, right, or take the queen. So it's already a wrap here, and in the game, takes, and knight g5, and that was the wrap up. After knight takes g5, things went downhill from there. But what can we learn from this game, right? We can learn that black's knight g6 setup didn't exactly work, right? You saw that I could have played f5 in the opening setup, right? And then later on, I didn't do much, but I played the move h4 and I started gaining space. So I think at this moment, maybe black could have played h6, tried to stop the attack a little bit, but it's hard to say, right? h5, g4, and now I'm sealing down the activity for the rook. So now I'm continuing to make progress. Bishop, all the pieces are developing. And here, I have to say, in the game, I didn't think that I had a plus 3.8 advantage. I think in the game that I might have had maybe, I was either plus 1 or I was either, minus 0.5, because I kind of felt like this pawn was a very critical part of my position, and if I lost it, maybe c5 was coming, maybe some breakthrough on this file was coming. I just wasn't sure, and I really underestimated my own attack, and it had a lot of power, and these open files, these rooks, and the coordination of the knight and the pawns, that's what allowed me to win the game. I could have even played knight to e5 here, right? Because the queen is obviously overloaded. So that's another thing to consider. But that is the first game. I know it looked like a blowout, but it wasn't. It was hard work, and it was me trying to find ways to really get through to black's odd-looking position, right? Bringing the rooks in and staying active, even though I am down a pawn here. Being active and staying productive is just the way to go when approaching a chess game. Let's go to the next game. This was a French defense that I played. It was e4, e6, knight to f3, and now c5. So this is like an advance, but then the wing gambit shows up. This is what they call the wing gambit because it's on the side of the board. It's not in the center, right? You go on the side, and the goal is after pawn takes, you play d4, and you solidify your center, So that is the goal of the wing gambit. So after knight c6, I just tried to develop as much as possible, right? Knight to f5, bishop to e7, I castled, and here our friend Anthon2010 made the decision to take the knight on f5 with the bishop. Now I have to say, I'm not sure I'm a big fan, but I'm also not sure whether I'm not a fan of this move. Like, the move bishop takes knight has its good and bad. So obviously the good is that after pawn takes, the structure is going to be very odd, right? But at the same time, if you move the queen over and the knight comes to e6, there might be plenty of opportunities for black to play. And after bishop takes, knight a3, bishop d7, I was just developing normally. I could have also developed to e6, but I kind of felt, if bishop d7, maybe one day I get to play b5. I want to keep my flexibility open. I was also thinking after something like queen to b3, I want to be able to still play b5 because if knight takes, rook to b8 and the knight is going to be lost. So after c4, I was actually very happy because of this move, bishop to b5, pinning the rook or skewering the rook, however you call it. Rook to c1, and here I took on c4 immediately. But I do regret this decision a little bit. I could have delayed it with the move rook to c8 and put more pressure on it because the rook on f1 is going nowhere. And so this knight really can't go anywhere without losing material. So what I should have done is I should have played either rook c8, queen d5, tried to get something to attack this f1 rook more. But instead I played bishop takes c4. I went for the trade, queen d7, queen b3, and I decided, I have an extra pawn on the queen side. I have these two guys, they're pass pawns, they're going for it. So I was like, I have to take advantage of that. So I traded, right? But here I played knight c6, and I remember thinking, did I really like the move knight c6? Or was I playing it just to put pressure on these center guys? And to be honest, I played knight c6 partially because I wanted to get this fork in, but I guess I just wasn't planning far enough because as long as the queen moves to, let's say, a3, there really is no way that this knight on c6 is doing much. I would say it's more of, it probably prevents black from doing the things that black needs to do. So for example, the knight should belong on e7 and go to d5. Right now, the knight is sort of preventing this trade that is probably good for black. And in addition, the knight is very vulnerable to if white plays something like d5 and starts opening up this file, right? So there are those things to consider. After queen e3, I played b6, and at this moment I looked at white and I sort of said, does white have a way of breaking through here? And initially I was like, no. But now upon further inspection, white has this move d5, and although it may just look like a sacrifice, white has this move queen to c3. Because if you play knight to e7 to defend the rook, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, queen takes c8, and back rank mate is coming. So I have to be aware of what I'm defending and the kinds of decisions I'm making. So obviously this wasn't a good decision, as white could have played d5 and won my knight on c6. So I think I have to be very careful of what I do in this position. Even though I might be a pawn up, there are still so many dangers associated with this position. So here our friend Anthon2010 plays the move rook back to c2. I'm pretty sure Anthon probably didn't know what to do. So I played knight b4. I wanted to force the trade. So we traded, and I said, I'm going to bring my queen to c4. I think it's very powerful there, because number one, d5 can never happen, and I get to create this pathway for my pawn to go all the way to a2, where my queen and my knight look at it. So after g3, I played h6 because, sometimes when your opponent plays this king air move, I'm going to give my king some air as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the game here, and I'm going to introduce how I converted this ending in the next video. So you won't want to miss it, but I'll see you next time.